Welcome to One with the Other Way, a podcast about your journey and finances. I'm your host, James, and on today's episode, we're talking about vacations and how to plan them, and what's the best way to be intentional in your planning process. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Welcome to One with the Other Way, a podcast about your journey and finances. I'm your host, James, and today we have our two advisors from Finances for Real Life, Wanda and Peggy. Wanda is currently in France, and Peggy is in the office.
Yes, thank you. I'm in the office. You made it sound so dreary and sad. It's okay. I spend a lot of time here. I try not to wish it away. That's kind of my thing too. Don't wish for your weekends. People are like, "Oh, I can't wait till Friday. I can't wait till Saturday." Really? That's, you're wishing away 5/7 of your week.
True. If you live for the weekends, you're not living a long life.
That's correct. So it's okay that I'm in the office. I'm all right with that.
So, kind of as we were just talking, you're doing the Étape du Tour de France. I went and watched the stage that you are going to be doing. I watched someone do it on their own time beforehand, and it's brutal. I'm excited for you, but it looks hard.
So it is hard. It is 14,000 feet of vertical elevation. So if you think about Colorado, which is at 5,000 feet, and you talk about the 14,000 14ers or whatever, the hills, the mountains there, it would be as if you went from the plains of Colorado all the way up to the top of one of those mountains. That's about how much elevation it'll be. So I want to actually go back to talking about what Peggy said in her intro video when she said that one of the most important things about what we do is help people have a great life present and down the road. And part of that has to do with vacations and taking time for yourself.
I agree. And speaking of that, Peggy is going to Scotland, which is a huge trip, and we're really excited for Peggy. Peggy, you want to kind of talk about where this plan came from and what you're excited to do?
Yeah, I don't know where it came from. It was just it's time to go on a vacation. I hadn't been on a vacation in a couple years. Anyway, we picked Scotland. So then after we pick, then we start deciding, well, what do we want to see in Scotland and all of that. So,
Do you want to see some Scottish horses?
it's funny that you say that because I haven't thought at all about Scottish horses or any horse things. I said something to my daughter the other day about, I finally started getting hotels, and she said something about those cute long-haired Scottish cows. And I'm like, okay, sure. They do, I guess. They have some hairy cows. I don't know, to be honest with you. I do think that those little shaggy cows are really cute. We also do like to experience the people and the actual culture
the
there.
culture, yeah.
So this is one of the nice parts of this trip and the tour. Usually I go to a small village. This town here was listed as one of the 10 most beautiful towns in the world, or small villages.
nice.
And remind us of the name again of the town you're in.
Annonay, and it's just outside Geneva. So you can take a train to the airport in Geneva, and it's pretty quick and no traffic. But what's nice is it's the local people, and that's like the best part. You go on Friday nights, and they have the town has a little DJ downtown teaching people how to dance, and so older couples dancing, young people playing chess or checkers on the park in the town center. This morning I went swimming in the lake with some of the locals. So it's where it's at. And there's no tourists here because all the tourists are, generally they go to Geneva because that's the town, and it's a lovely town, but not nearly as nice and peaceful.
That's
as
exciting.
I do like it.
That's really exciting.
Yeah, you meet some interesting people and just different habits, and it makes you smile because they like to do the same things you and I do, right? We like to talk, we like to get to know each other, have a cup of coffee.
Yeah, kind of I know we talked on an earlier podcast, Peggy, about just having a cup of coffee somewhere, just being present with that. The idea of getting a cup of coffee, having intentionality with your planning of a trip to build in that time. Even if it sounds like you're not scheduling something, you're intentionally not scheduling something for you to be present with the surrounding area around you. But I think part of that planning is budgeting. And it sounds pretty easy, oh, well, yeah, you can just plan your budget around your trip. But something my wife and I have learned is that it's actually more difficult to stick to a budget when you go on vacation. And I mean, do y'all want to kind of talk about like what are some tips and tricks, or what are you seeing that makes it harder to plan and budget
You
around a
know,
trip?
I, I'm going to talk a little practical, and then I'm going to actually toss it back to Peggy because Peggy has an interesting concept here, and I think she's
And as
exactly
awful as a
right on
financial
that
planner, I'm
concept.
like, I don't
No,
want to
no, no,
comment on
no,
this.
nope, nope. You're going to comment on it because I think it's important because it's a life of this and that. Financial planning is important, and what you say is important.
It's
So
true.
let me just do the practical, and then I'll let you talk to what you do. It's important that people take vacations. I think it's noted about half of us will take a vacation away from our home this year, and it's important to plan. We want to do it, and it should be done with some thought around it. And so, generally, when I'm looking at it from a practical standpoint, from here, we're looking at it from the cost of an airline ticket or the transportation to get to the destination. Either you're going to get in a car, a train, or a plane to go somewhere. And then you're looking at hotels, and then the cost of an overnight stay at a hotel. You're either going to be a Super 8 person or you're going to be a Four Seasons or somewhere in between. So you have to budget for that, the number of nights that you're going to be in a hotel, plus 20% tax, because most hotels are generally charging about a 20% tax these days. And so you need to plan for that. And then you have to plan for meals. And so there are sometimes some ways that you can cut some cost on a meal. Maybe you have a picnic on Lake Annecy, which is a very economical way of having a meal. But generally, you have to plan for 3 meals a day in some way, shape, or form in a way that makes you happy so that you're not hangry during your vacation, that you can actually enjoy it. So you don't want to deny yourself food to save money so that you can have a good time on vacation. And then normally you're going to want to do something, an activity. An activity is going to cost money. Either you're going to get in the car and go somewhere, or you're going to go into a park, maybe, or a museum, and these things cost money.
Let's hear it,
Okay.
Peggy.
Well, okay. Well, no, you know what? I was thinking about it. It's actually not so bad the way I do it. And I do have a logic to it and I do plan. So, right. I think of all the things that Wanda said. It's true. Most of the time for my trips, hotel is the most expensive thing. Not because I stay in a, very expensive hotel, but just because it's each day, right? The first time I went to Europe, I again was like, well, I haven't been to anywhere in Europe. So I sat down and just picked major airports and did flights. And I went to the one that was the cheapest because it didn't matter to me what the destination was. That's how I've been. I went to Luxembourg and it was great. Had a great time. And we did a lot of stuff in Belgium. So I do plan. I get my airline tickets and I plan that and I get my hotels. I sometimes will pay for a tour, like a tour guide, depending on where I'm going. But a lot of times I plan my own things. My thought is, and so John and I had this exact conversation actually, um, because we're thinking about budget and money and how much it's going to cost, and right, we just bought land and all that stuff. So my thought is to do all of the work before you go, right? I do all that thinking, all that planning, all that preparation before I actually go on the trip. When I go on the trip, I don't think about money anymore. I just have a good time. So we plan, he wanted to do a little more winging it than I did. And I said, you can't wing it with hotels. I know that when you're young, maybe you're staying in hostels and you can a little bit. And I've done that. I've stayed in hostels and they're great and they're a great way to do it. But I feel like if you don't plan where you're going to sleep, you're going to probably spend more unless you go to the hostel, right? Because you didn't look at the different places, you didn't look how to get there, you didn't plan all that. So I do my planning and my budgeting and my how am I going to save, and if I stay in this hotel, then I can spend more money on these tours, or I can do, this activity. I do all that before I go. And then when I go, I don't think about the money. I mean, I don't go crazy like, going outside of and shopping and buying a bunch of things, but I don't think about the money anymore when I get there because now I'm on the trip and I did all my preparation beforehand. Basically, I think the important thing is that you have a plan. You put in your plan your annual budget for vacations, and then you do your research before you go. Spend a lot of time planning your vacation. So make sure you spend your time doing your research, planning ahead where you're going to save and where you're going to splurge. And then when you get there, be there and enjoy your vacation.
So,
Yep.
anyways, thanks for listening. I'll have any notes in the show notes for resources or anything that we talk about that anyone wants to look up. I'll put the Atop the Tour de France if anyone wants to check out what Wanda's doing. Yeah, stay in touch with us. Schedule a appointment with us if you're interested in talking with us about your own personal journey. I will have that in the show notes as well. And we hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week ahead of you. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, SIPC. Investment advice offered through Finances for Real Life, a registered investment advisor and separate entity from LPL Financial. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision.